Another Island 54 development stream. Um, in my last stream, I was working on getting the trees displaying in the game client. I previously had them starting to actually render on the server. And so today I'm going to continue that work. Um, there was an issue I ran into where half the trees were appearing upside down, which was clearly something wrong in my rotation code here. Um, I've not put any more work into this over the weekend because I was working on getting um, the new devlog episode out. So I did put a little bit of thought into it though, and my concern is that I wrote this code to allow the prefab to override the default rotation. But my recollection is that the client should already be doing this. So I have prefabs in, if I bring up Unity, one moment. Where's Unity? It is loading. Here it comes. No, don't download a new version of Unity. I'll do that later off stream. So in my prefabs here, the things like the trees, spruce, these already have a rotation built into them. So I shouldn't need to specify this. Hello, Aaron M. Guy, welcome. Welcome back. Um, I shouldn't need to specify this in on my server side because the client knows which way up the tree goes. Now, I need to have a bit of a think about whether or not this should be the client's responsibility because I guess the question is what counts as a default direction? I mean, players, you could say that they face forward and have an up direction. What about trees? Do they face up or do they have a forwards direction with an up? My gut feeling is that they have a forwards direction with an up, just that you don't really know which direction, looking at a tree, it's not clear which direction should be the forward direction. So I'm going to go with my gut there and say that I am going down the wrong path here in overriding this. Now, this doesn't explain the behavior I was seeing, so I am just going to set that back to 0. Um, uh, for anyone who has just joined, my current thinking on this is that while there is a bug in my rotation code on the server with bringing scatter in, I'm not convinced that I want to fix that right now because I think that I shouldn't be. The rotation was wrong before I started trying to fix it. So that should make sense in a moment, hopefully. Now, where was I? Got to find my IntelliJ. There it is. So this code should still work. When these values are 0, it is my belief that my code is working. So I did have some tests for that. Let's just load up a test. Where was it? It's not in common chords. Oh, it must be in I54 common. Here are my tests. So here's a test that fails. Welcome back, Griffith. Good to see you again. So here's some basic code to make sure we can get to and from degrees and radians. Here to make sure we can convert to and from Euler angles. Here's a test that is currently failing. And it's probably just my understanding of the order that the Euler angles get multiplied in, or get applied in, I should say. Can multiply by 0 is the test I'm going to write here, just to make sure that I'm not going to break things by moving this over onto the client side for now. This is just kicking the can down the road, I know that, but that is, I think, the best path forward at the moment. So with trees, I want to be able to rotate them around like that. So that is your. My pitch, I'm going to keep at 0. And then I am going to multiply them. I'll double check my multiplication order here. You want to do basically from memory, I'm pretty sure this is correct. You want to do the second angle multiplied by the first angle. So we have 0. So I really want to do, yes, and multiply by 0. So we have something that is not rotated. We have a rotation around the y-axis. We want to apply that rotation to the thing that wasn't rotated, and I expect us to get back out 0, 1, 3, 5, 0 here. Let's test that. And what has happened here? Yes, so what this is doing, let's just check this out. I'll get a breakpoint in here. The order that the coordinates are being applied in is Z, which is the roll, and then on X, which is the pitch, and then finally the yaw. So when I take something that's just not rotated at all, and then I rotate it by yaw, I'm going 135 degrees, so I'm rotating it all the way behind us. I am trying to get my head around some quaternion rotation graphic. Something is going wrong, and it's causing my trees to turn upside down. And so I'm just trying to get my head around what it is I'm doing wrong. If you see anything silly in my assumptions here, then I am all ears. I'm hoping that this is just a mistake in the test. So let's just see, because of course there are multiple ways of representing which sounds backwards, the order of axes. I'm pretty confident that it goes Z, then X, then Y. And my belief is that this is the correct order to multiply quaternions. This will apply pitch and then yaw, is my understanding. I'll see in a moment when I think through this logic. I have a feeling that what's coming out of here, which is this Euler here, I suspect is going to make sense if I go and take my hand and apply a Z rotation of 180. So that's going to flip it all the way back. So it's on its back at this point. I then apply an X rotation of 180. Now, normally, I'm going to use two hands here. Normally, an X rotation of 180 would be pitch. Hang on, Z. Where's Z? Z's there, sorry. We're going 180, and then we're going 180, and then we're doing a Y of 45. So this Euler angle does actually look correct. Your pitch roll to quaternion. Yeah, so I'm trying to follow the unity convention here, and I'm going to confirm that I've got that right. Unity quaternion. Yeah, I've Googled this before. Here it is. In Unity, these rotations are performed around the Z-axis, the X-axis, and the Y-axis in that order. And Z being the axis that runs straight ahead, I think that's correct. Although I do have a disagreement with the library I'm using about what actually constitutes roll, pitch, and yaw. So maybe my issue here is that I'm misunderstanding which of these axes is yaw, pitch, and roll. But I don't think I am there. And the result I'm getting, it makes sense to me here. It's just that this 0, 135, 0 is exactly equivalent to rotating 180 degrees that way. Sorry, I can't see if I'm on the screen. Let me get, maybe yes. Yeah, so 180 degrees that way, 180 degrees that way, and then 45 degrees back that way. That's exactly equivalent to rotating 135 that way. So I actually think that this is a problem in my test. Good question, Griffic. Is Z up in the library I'm using? It may not be. And then my question is this a left-hand or right-hand coordinate system? Very good point. Well, let's just see. I've got a feeling that it might not matter at the end of the day, as long as I'm consistent about the direction I pass things in. So this is the test I was really concerned about. So this one is now failing, but I'm convinced that the results I'm getting out are reasonable. So I'm going to just put in those values in here because these are completely legitimate rotations to represent this pair of rotations. If I can convince myself that the result coming out of the library is just here is also correct, then I am going to move on and assume that I actually have an issue on my library side. On my client side. So let's see here. I'm trying to, first of all, pitch by 90 degrees. So my tree it's been designed where the y-axis is pointing up. It's probably a mistake in the way I did that. Well, it's a difference in the coordinate systems between Blender and Unity. Unity uses the same handedness as OpenGL, yes. Yeah, that's a good point, Griffic. So why they use a different roll, pitch, and yaw, I have absolutely no idea. And in fact, I'm just going to take a look at, where's the rotation code? Where I pull these out, I just want to see whether or not are they consistent with a yaw being on the y axis? X. So they call roll the x-axis. So they call that roll. So that means their x-axis goes backwards, forwards. Their pitch, sorry, roll is that. So their x-axis, yes, goes backwards, forwards. Their pitch, which is this one, is their y. So they have y going. Have I just completely confused myself while writing this code? This looks perfectly right. Hang on. Oh, yeah, so they've got their their x-axis going backwards, forwards. Their y does indeed go left, right. I'm just confusing myself now. Yeah, so it looks like they've just got a different z-axis. Their z is weirdly left, right. Yeah, that makes sense, Griffic. So I think that as long as I'm consistent about the order I process them in, then I think this will work. So let's just get a breakpoint in here. Now, what am I trying to do? I'm trying to do a yaw of 90 degrees. Sorry, a pitch of 90 degrees. I'll just quickly think this one through first, Griffic. Yes, I should have exported uh, from Blender with the -90 to begin with, but I had some troubles getting the coordinate systems to match up at all. So I ended up baking that -90 into my prefab, and that worked just fine. But what I so what I'm doing here, I don't actually need this particular bit to work. I do need this to work because I don't want to remove my code that allows rotations to be baked into the server-side file. And what I want here, as long as this works, then I'm just going to leave everything as 0 on the server side. Well, the prefab rotation as 0 on the server side, and hopefully it will just work on the client once I've fixed whatever the bug is, because there must be a bug on the client at that point. So let's see, I've got a pitch of 90, so I'm trying to lift something up like that. I've got a yaw of -135. So in my mind, we are going up by 90 and then rotating by 145. So here's the position I'm looking for. What do? They debug. So here I've got Z, which for me is into and out of the screen. And this is going 180, so we roll it over onto its back. We then apply the X of 90, which I believe... this could well be upside down. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to see how this looks on the client, because I've set these to 0. I've confirmed that 0 multiplied by something gives me an expected result. So I'm going to see what this looks like on the client. Now, if my recollection is right, this is going to lead to my trees all lying down, just because that's just what it's been doing. Which one am I most likely going to want to debug? Probably terrain. No, most likely the entity service. This is where the rotations get applied. So we'll just run the debugger. So I was just using your Griffic, and when it didn't work off the bat, I think due to a bug in my client, I tried to fix it by applying the rotation to get the trees into the correct orientation to begin with. And so I've put in code to allow this kind of default orientation to be specified. I could take that out and just set the yaw, which will allow the trees to get rotated randomly, which is what I'm actually trying to achieve here. If I can leave this code in and have it behave the same way as if I didn't have this code, then I'm a bit happier, and I'll then just fix the client-side bug. Because I guess it's better that I have this code in here, even if I'm not using it at the moment. If it works, I'll keep it. Okay, so let's just see what this looks like in Unity. The default is a quaternion facing forwards, so I guess that's the... yes, I can never remember what the default quaternion is, but I believe that's correct. So it's a forward-facing, a quaternion that faces forwards down the z-axis, I believe. Although the quaternions are rotation. Yeah, I'm not sure. No, I'm doing random times default, Graphic. Random cross product default. Is it cross product? Multiply. Yeah, I'm multiplying them in the opposite order to what you're saying there. I believe is the correct order to do it. Okay, where's my... I can't find my Unity window. Here it is. Is that backwards? That would be hilarious if that were my issue. Quaternion multiplication order for composite rotations. Composition, oh, where did it go? Composition of spatial rotations. I'm having troubles parsing all of this. Rotation operations, visualizing, don't want to visualize it. Non-commutativity. Yeah, I was under the impression that was the right order. And the funny thing is, it's working when... Where's my test? It's working as expected if I set this angle here to 45, but the moment it goes up above 90 is when it breaks. So let's just see what it looks like. I'll try it round the other way in a second to see if that magically fixes it. Here we go. Oh, I need to turn on my spruce trees. Where are my spruce trees? They are specified in the service config. I must have removed this code for part of making my video. Let's just check out. Let's do this off screen quickly. Huh. All right, Graphic, I think that I've had this problem once before, and I think that I was expecting it to be round the other way. For example, to apply a P followed by a Q, multiplied in the order PQ. Why did I think it needed to go backwards? All right, I think you might have just solved the problem for me there, Graphic. I'll see if I can get my tests working with that. Sorry, I'm just getting my version control sorted behind the scenes here. Services, config YAML. Nope. No, I never committed the version that had the spruce trees, so I'm just gonna have to put that back in again. Let's just go scatter. I think I called it scatter. Where's my code? That's going to be in the chunk terrain generator. And this comes through config.scatter.rules. right? Hang on, scatter dot rules. It's just scatter dot rules. And then in here, I need to specify a rule. Find my rule type. Do I specify that? No, that would have been smart. So we need a max height, a min height. I think there was a prefab spruce. Max height is going to be, I don't know, let's just set it to 30 for now. Min height, let's set it to 16. I think that'll just let them generate anywhere above water level. What else do I need? Probability. I'm going to set this really high, like 10%, so we can get lots of trees. And then there's a max rule dot max per chunk. So we'll do max per chunk, and I'll just set that to 10 for now. Restart this service. Just going to make sure that this shows the trees lying down, and then I'm going to see whether or not Griffith's suggestion gets my test passing. All right. We'll run that. I probably need to blow away my database because I will have generated chunks. Oh, there's a troll over there as well. The trolls are running by default. You guys probably get to see a little bit of the smoke and mirrors that goes on to get the devlog episodes out. The pathfinding is real in the devlog, but I turned on his walking animation just to get it looking a bit more compelling. Where's my prompt? Command prompt. I need a command prompt. Okay, new command prompt. And then I'll do a get into services docker compose down. That will give me a nice fresh database. Inputting assets, why? I'm seeing no spruce trees. Don't think I remembered to do a commit at the end of the last episode either. Do we have any exceptions? No, that all looks healthy. So why is it not generating any spruce trees? Or is it? Maybe it is. I need entities. Which entities do we have in the game? We have a player. Okay, so it's not generating the scatter. So I've broken something after the last episode, the last stream. So let's just check what's going on there. Generate scatter. Here we go. This happens in the terrain service. Oops. Sorry. Just run. Here we go. Here comes the scatter code. Oh, I've got another window that's drawing my attention. Here we go. So we have nothing in to-dos. Okay, so this is just something silly. Rules is null. Scatter dot rules. Looks like a list to me. I'm a bit confused there. That looks like valid YAML. I really wish I had checked in my code. All right, let's just, as a proof of concept, just set that to some value so that I can see that it is actually reading that from the file. And then once I'm sure that's running, if I run forwards, this is crashed. Run, play. Okay, here it goes. Config.scatter. I'm doing something silly, aren't I? Ah, here are the prefab rules. They are specified in the terrain service, not the root service. That makes complete sense. Sorry about that. Assume that. Stop running. That was a bit of a wasted effort. Let's just get the terrain, get the spruce trees back in. Height probability, that looks reasonable. I will blow away my database again. I need a better way of doing this rather than just blowing everything away. I'm able to blow away the scatter for individual chunks, but I guess I kind of need a way of clearing out just the chunk caches and making sure that everything else hangs around. Play the game. In Rider, this button here is just equivalent of hitting this play button, usually, except something's locked up, so thanks for that, graphic. Restart Unity. Confirm that my server is running. Yes. Looks healthy. I am in fact going to just generate the chunk from in here. 0/0. That is creating a troll. That is fetching a chunk. That will cause it to regenerate these. Oh, and my server has crashed. Okay, run that without breakpoints. Once it comes up, that looks like it's up. I'll regenerate that chunk. I'll then fetch all the entities, make sure that we have a bunch of trees. Yep, here's a whole bunch of spruce trees. So when I run the client, it should go and generate a bunch more chunks, and we should have lots of trees, and I'm expecting them to lie down. Oops, and I wasn't expecting to fall through the ground, but that'll do. Okay, so I've got a whole bunch of lying down trees. This is a bug in the client. It is just not applying that rotation uh, from the prefab on the client side, which it should be. Well, welcome to the stream, courtesy of you. Uh, I'm I'm surprised you find it fast and polished. It's been quite a while. It's coming up on, I think it's about 4 or 5 months now that I've been working on it. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with the progress overall. It's starting to get there. Now, so I've got two things on my little stack in my head here. So the the broader thing is trying to fix this bug that is a client side bug. These trees should be standing up. But before I get there, I'm going to quickly try out Griffic's idea about me having the multiplication around the wrong way. And if that's true, then I should have a method to do the multiplication in the right order for me, but I don't. So let's just try pitch multiplied by yaw. Now, it also occurred to me that what I do up here, this one would also be round the wrong way, but I'll get to that in a second. What I do here by constructing the quaternions, multiplying them, and then pulling the Euler angles back out is a silly way of doing things because there are multiple ways of representing the same rotation with different Euler angles. So a much better way of doing this would actually be to go const expected is going to be equal to from Euler. And in here, I should do 0, 45, 0. 0, 135, 0. And now if I just compare Euler to expected, is that not happy? Oh, that needs to be a vector. I can just expect that to be close to, I'll compare the components. So I'll go x should be close to expected.x, because we are still going to get rounding errors. We'll do the same for y and z. Oh, sorry, this is not meant to be Euler. That's meant to be combined.x, combined.y, and combined.z. So I'm just taking out the uncertainty. When I was doing a from Euler, a to Euler, there's just uncertainty into how it's going to resolve those Euler angles. And so this gets rid of it. Lastly, I need the real component, which is w. And I think that's fair. Vector 3. Okay. I'm going to run this test and see if this one passes. This one should pass because it was passing before. My y component is correct. My z component is correct. My x combined.x is correct. And my w is also correct. Okay, so this will pass. There's my test. Debug. Just stop everything. Okay, that test passed. So I'm going to do the same thing over here. I'm no longer going to convert to Euler. I'm instead going to say expected is from Euler. And in this case, I expect it just to combine these Euler angles, which is minus 90, 135, 0. I keep on forgetting that this takes a vector. I should probably change that so that it can do either. Then these need to become combined. Oops. And they should be close to expected dot x, y, and z. And we need w. Now, if this test passes, then I will owe Griffith a big thank you, because I've changed the order of the multiplications. There we go. Well, I feel a bit silly there. It's like I even mentioned, I ran into this same problem with the order of quaternions in one of my devlog episodes. Make sure this one still passes. Run that. Excellent. Just make sure that I'm actually testing what I think I am. I'm just going to intentionally break my test. This is a very handy trick. If you don't trust your test, just break it and make sure that it fails. That fails. Excellent. And now it runs. Beautiful. Yeah, that's not the first time you've helped either, Griffith. I very much appreciate it. I'm feeling some real, I'm not sure if cognitive dissonance is the right word about this. I could have sworn that this is the way that feels correct to me. And I could have sworn it was meant to feel not correct. And that I ran into problems in my original harvesting code when it spawns in the branches that drop from the tree. I could have sworn that I got confused. And so obviously I've managed to put my mental model in the right spot, but not corrected the fact that I thought I was meant to be confused, if that makes any sense. Okay. So that actually means that I could do a horrible, horrible hack to fix the trees by modifying my YAML file over on the server side. I'm going to do that just to prove that that bug is fixed. If I put a minus 90 in here, then delete my database, then I believe that this will magically work. Delete, but it's still not fixed. This is a hack that I shouldn't be applying. So we do that. I restart my service. Then once that comes up, I'll grab a chunk just to confirm that everything's working, not crashing. Go, service is up. That's working. Grab the entities. We've got lots of spruce trees. Bring the client back in. And I believe the trees should be all standing up and rotated in random directions. No. All right. That's a little confusing, but I'll ignore that for now. Spruce, rotation. All right, I'm going to ignore that. Set this back to 0. Oh. It's my first day. Yeah, the deleting a database. So I've actually got something of a development philosophy. I do a lot of, well, I have in the past done a lot of cloud computing. And there's obviously always a concern when you're doing cloud computing that you're going to be working in some staging environment and accidentally delete your production database. And I'm a very strong believer in the concept that no one should have access to the production database. It shouldn't be possible to delete it without jumping through so many hoops. It's not funny. And so I'm never too concerned about deleting databases because I never give myself access to the database. The database is always constructed programmatically. It's the schema gets advanced programmatically. It's a fairly strong belief I have that all systems, all production systems, should be built like that. All right. So before I just give up on this approach, because I do think this should be fixing it, I want this to be. I do want this to work. And this is going to be that multiplication error again, because I didn't actually fix the real code. Uh, Here it is. So this should be prefab quaternion. Yeah, Griffith, I go even further than multiple credentials. In every production system I've worked on in the last, 5 or 6 years, I literally have not had access to the database. And I would have had to have explicitly granted myself access. So use like an AWS admin user to give permission to delete that database. And anytime I need to do anything, it involves actually committing code into production, and that might run some check against the database that I don't otherwise have access to do. It means it's all version controlled. The system can be brought up at any time. You can give yourself multiple accounts and just use the one without access, except that stops working the moment you use the wrong account. So the idea is to put as many hurdles in the way as possible, and so that the actual process for deleting the database will be different if you ever needed to delete the database. Uh, okay, so I think that will work. Yeah, read-only access often works well. I tend to put enough REST endpoints that you can access any data in the database, and of course throw them behind appropriate authorization. Uh, does this work? Let's go and scare everyone again by deleting the database. Then run it again. One disadvantage, it's my first day with giving read-only access, is it actually also reduces the kind of traceability of things. Take an extreme thing. If a hacker were to get in using that account, using that credential, then they'd be able to read things from the database and you may not know that they've read it from the database. Whereas if you do everything through another layer, then you can be logging things like that. And of course, you don't have access to delete log messages. So if you put everything behind a REST endpoint, you can see what people have accessed if you ever need to look into what actually happened to a database. I mean, you can do the same thing at the database level, I guess, but I find it easier to do it at the REST level. Okay, so that's running. Let's just bring a client in. Hopefully our trees are up the right way. I'm actually going to stop looking into this if they're not. Yep, there we go. They are up the right way. We fell through the ground. I know what's causing it to fall through the ground. So that is the hack to get the trees up the right way. Again, huge thank you, Griffic. That was really helpful. I didn't believe you. I totally didn't believe you. So let's take the hack out and fix the actual bug, because this rotation should actually be applied by the client. The server should not be making any assumptions about how the model is rotated relative to the actual game world axis. Sorry, thinking. I was going to say thinking out loud, but I'm thinking in my head. I'm talking in my head. I need to think about how these scatters get generated, how they get instantiated in the world. Now that's going to happen, I presume, in the server manager. Well, I'll have the text spruce somewhere in here. Here it is. So if we see a spruce tree comes back, yeah, it's pretty exciting. It's my first day. Took, what was that, 50 minutes, and I stocked the trees. The behavior was really weird. Half the trees on Friday were just turning upside down. It was half of them. It was only the ones that were being rotated by more than 90 degrees. I should also check in my client code to make sure I haven't put in something to limit the rotation. I've got a feeling I may have done that, so I'm not going to get too excited yet. But why are these not having their rotation applied to them? I think what I need to do is going to put a bookmark in here, and I'm going to go look at my old client scatter code, which is over here. Yeah, it is always the simple things. Like I got the first version of the scatter generation on the server, just, that was just a couple of hours work, and I was expecting that to be a couple of days work. But then just getting these little bits and pieces cleaned up is now another couple of days after that, and I thought it would have been a couple of hours. All right. In here, I send back this, what I call a completion function. I explained this in Thursday's stream, I think it was. And this is where the actual instantiation of the game objects happens in the old client scatter code. This doesn't set a rotation. I know what it's going to be. I think I just override the rotation when it comes back from the server. Whereas I should be multiplying it. Welcome back, Ifman. Currently working on getting trees displaying properly on the client side again, but being generated on the server. The trees are at least pointing in the right direction now. They weren't doing that on Friday. So over here, yeah, see, this is round the wrong way. This is how I remembered it, Griffic. This is how I remember rotations having to be applied. I'm going to ignore that for now. So yes, we get the rotation, we multiply it by whatever is in the prefab. Now this is going to be a bit of a pain to do, because I need to detect the server's... The server is going to ask the client to rotate the tree in a certain way, and I need to apply that to whatever was in the prefab. Or I can just add the prefab into its own. No, I was going to say I could add the prefab into its own parent component, but that will apply the rotations in the wrong order. Need to think about this. Let's just take a look at the spruce prefab again. Freeze spruce. I think I might just have to take a copy of the rotation as I load the prefab. Yeah, I think that's the way to do it. Let's do that. I do have this remote entity data. This stores all the components and things that come back from the server, and it handles all the translations and things. One of the changes I made over the weekend, for example, was I changed it so that when a new transform comes back from the server, rather than just applying it, I actually use a move towards. It's a bit of a hack in here using it assumes the speed that the mob is moving. But that's what this class is able to do, and that's how I got the movement looking so fluid in last night's episode. But what I can do in here is I can go and add some more. We've got transform data. I'm just going to add a quaternion, which is going to be the prefab rotation. I'll just make that a basic member, convert it to a property if I need to. Then, when I construct one of these, it's when the I'm going to have to add another method just to configure it. I'm not, because I need too much control over the life cycle of this. I can't use the standard component lifecycle stuff. So in here, I'm just going to do a void. It's public. I'll just set it from. I'll set this field, this property, from outside this class. So when I construct one of these, yeah, quaternion fun, that's what you missed. Hopefully I'm done with it. Although you saw that, didn't you, Griffith, that the C# code is working around the other way. It is multiplying around the other way. So something is still amiss. Okay, so on message received, we add a remote entity component in here. I can go remote entity data, and then I'm going to do remote entity data dot prefab rotation. Let's give it a proper. No, I don't want that to be serialized anyway. Turn off serialization. Non-serialized. Okay, prefab rotation is just going to be equal to the update.transform.rotation. So this is in the case, not sure why that's not working. Vector 3. Oh yeah, that's fair enough. Quaternion dot from. Is it just Euler? Yep. I think I've got a convert function in here. Hang on, convert rotation. There we go. So anytime if we get an update for something that didn't exist, we go and instantiate the prefab. We create one of these remote entity data components. That's defined below. Let's just call this new data. There we go. And then it just stores the rotation that came in with this. No, that shouldn't be coming from the update. We are trying to store. This is wrong. Well, thing's wrong. This should be pulling it off the actual component because that's what just got loaded from the client-side prefab. So transform.rotation. Quaternions are a value type, so this will actually copy it. So we grab a copy of the prefab. Then, anytime we see a rotation, we need to do the multiplication. Now, Unity, I am becoming increasingly convinced, does its multiplications round the other way. So here, I'm just going to do the remote entity data. No, I'm going to let that apply. All right, let's just see what that does. Well, I'm going to just leave it for now. Sorry, I just need to demonstrate again. I need to convince myself that I do in fact still have the bug where the trees are lying down without the hack on the server side, because I don't want to be applying other rotations if I'm in the wrong state. So I'm just going to delete the whole database, bring everything up. That's up. And then run the client, and I'm expecting all the trees to be lying down. This will start. Thinking about it. Yep, I've still got this bug where we fall through the floor sometimes. That's okay. So yes, all of the trees are lying down, exactly the state I think I'm in. So now when I come back to Rider, I should be able to put that multiplication back in. And when we update the entity endpoint, we should be able to multiply that by, what was it called? It was the prefab rotation. I think that's it. Is that all we need to fix it? I shouldn't need to blow away the database this time because I've not changed the way that the trees are being created on the server. Yes, like a Christmas tree farm, very close to Christmas. Probably makes the resource harvesting a little bit simple though. Please all be standing up. They're not standing up. And are they all pointing in the same direction? No, they are all pointing in different directions. All right, so I just need to work out why that code didn't do what I thought. Let's watch a tree get created. Best way to do that is going to be to find, let's just see where this is getting returned. And then we'll step out of this and we should see it construct a tree. Good point, Graphic. I will do exactly that. Why is Unity so slow at the moment? Keeps on wanting to re-import the assets. So I'll do exactly that. That was in, there were two places that I was doing this. There was this one. Prefab times that. I'm going to set a bookmark there. And then where else was I doing it? It was just above, no, it was in the server manager. Down when we instantiate the object. Prefab rotation, and then here it is here. And I'll set a bookmark on that so I can easily get back to it. No, not that. Oh, I should have just put the breakpoint back in. Where's my breakpoint? That was in server manager. That's up here. There it is. Breakpoint. I'll rerun it with the multiplications, I believe, around the wrong way. But it should at least not leave them lying on their sides. So here's a spruce tree being constructed. I instantiate it. I keep on, okay, I'll turn that breakpoint off so that I don't keep hitting the breakpoint. I've instantiated something for this. I presume that's a spruce tree. Well, it must be. So new entity has what have we got here? Where's my transform? There's my transform. Yep, so here's something where we are rotating by about 1/3 pi. What's that? That's about 180 divided by 3. That's about 60 degrees. Oh, no, sorry, this is the forward vector. I don't want the forward vector. It's my rotation. Transform dot rotation. And there's the minus 90, 0, 0. So that's come from the local prefab. Come through here. I know I could make this all a lot simpler if I just re-exported my spruce tree with the correct orientation, but this is still going to come back and bite me at some other point in the future. New data. Do that. We set the prefab rotation, which is wrong. Oh, this is meant to be new entity. Oh, that's a nasty one. Transform.rotation. Wow, that was unpleasant. Okay. Is this all saved? Let's make sure. I think there's a button to make sure. Okay, no, it will not do a forced build for me apparently. Okay, this is just the multiplication being around the wrong way, but it's progress. Control 2, I've got one of them in here, so I'll put that back to where it was. So I still need to work out why I have two different rules for rotation. Because, I mean, it's fine if that's the case, but I don't. If that is the case, then I'm just going to have to put some helpers in on each side of here, the server and the client, to do those compositions for me, because that is going to bite me so many times otherwise. What's this doing? It seems to be locked up. Nope, it's thinking. Play. Let me guess, it's going to import the assets again. It was quick that time. All right, that is looking better. We have trees, everyone. And these trees are coming from the server. Okay, I am going to commit that. Trees rotated correctly. I really hope that prefabs use the same coordinate system as the scene. I know you mentioned UE4 is inconsistent. I think I did a bunch of experimentation when I first had a problem with the order of those multiplications, and I believed that it was completely reproducible, that they had to be done in reverse order, and I found a reference saying that it should have been done in reverse order. What am I doing? Dot, 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 dot. Demo. Just doing the client side commit as well. Excellent. So just for completeness, I will also add onto the server side very quickly. Things I say are going to happen very quickly, always happen very quickly, right? We'll just put these in as well. I'll need to put some client-side code on to support each of these prefabs, but that's just a really simple thing to do. We'll lift our spruce trees up a bit. Make some fewer of them. Then server side, client side. I presume you can switch on strings in C#. Doesn't seem to be complaining. Excellent. Case spruce. If I remember correctly, C# insists on braces. They're cleaner that way anyway. I tend to use braces in switch statements in other languages too. So I need each of these. We need raspberry. Raspberry. I should probably do this in a dictionary, but meh. In fact, I could probably do this as scriptable objects, would be even better, because then I could just configure these from the UI rather than doing it in code. We need the two kinds of stones, which are round stone and flat stone. And then I've just got to point them to the correct actual client-side prefabs. So scatter, I think I called them stones, did I? Oh, raspberry shrub. Just copy that out. Raspberry is going to go in there. Is that a tree? Yes, that was a tree. Round stones are that. And then lastly, we need the flat stones. What is Unity doing? It probably doesn't help that my code isn't compiling. Stone, flat, wedge. Oh, here we go. It's come back. No, it hasn't. Fix the compiler as hopefully that makes it wake up again. Yeah, I can't imagine the code's too easy to see on a mobile. I actually don't usually code with this larger font, so you can't ask me to make the code any bigger. This is as big as I'm willing to go. All right. Now, we won't have any flat stones or anything if I go into the game. However, if we run a little bit further along, we should start to see everything start to generate. Let's see. We have no scatter. That's not what I was expecting. That is probably just failing in here. No? What is happening? Oh, that's... Ah, I haven't defined those prefabs on the other side. That's easy. My whole computer seems to be going slowly. It's not OBS. OBS is only using 2 or 3%. Raspberry. Stone flat, did I call it? Stone underscore flat. Oh no, flat stone and round stone. A little bit repetitive. Of course, these will have other components on them once I start porting the harvesting system back across. Because this is where, I presume this is where things like the spruce tree will describe how they get broken down. I presume that will go in this file. There'll separately be recipes somewhere for actual crafting recipes. I don't want them to exist on the components. Let's see. I think this will work. Oh, this doesn't explain why the client wasn't seeing. So this was trying to generate a new chunk as I moved. As I moved the player, it tried to generate some new chunks. So this is not why it was failing to display the trees at all. So why is this one not behaving? I'm just going to come in here. Well, it should hit this breakpoint. Unless I'm just blowing the frame size. I actually assumed I'd be blowing the frame size well before this. I'd say that that's what it is. Uh, Griffith's question, can you get type checking in YAML files? I believe that should be possible. I believe that you can use, there's, I'm not sure if there's such thing as a YAML schema, but I believe there's such thing as a JSON schema. And YAML files are just an extension of JSON. So there's no reason I shouldn't be able to define the types, because that, yeah, that would be quite nice and avoid a lot of errors. If I had a schema for them, then yes, I agree. All right, I'll look into that at some point. Where am I at? I need to rerun my client. Yeah, I just don't think that this is gonna work, do I? And we're not hitting the breakpoint. So my guess is that I'm just not getting any packets at all from the server at the moment. Yeah, anytime you need to, JSON is great for machine to machine communication. Anytime that you need to be able to manipulate the data, I strongly recommend using YAML. Uh, they're always convertible, fairly straight. It's fairly straightforward to convert a YAML file to JSON. Uh, and a YAML interpreter can read JSON. So JSON is a subset of YAML. It's a very handy property of YAML. All right. So I'm going to prove that this is just some frame size issue. I mean, this is what I was hoping to work on next, is making it so that the server doesn't send all this data over to the client, because this is a massive amount of data to send over UDP. And you will see a lot of game developers will put a lot of effort into defining kind of a multi-frame UDP packet, and getting those to send reliably. They start to reinvent bits of TCP over the top. It's something I really have a strong disagreement with a lot of the reference material on how to do UDP networking code. My logic is, if you can't fit it into a small number of packets, there's just no point in sending it over UDP anyway, because you're going to start introducing all sorts of latency when you try to retransmit stuff. So my goal is to detect when things are starting to get too big and only send high priority updates. So that's going to be updates for things that are moving that are near the player. Otherwise, it's going to tell the player to go away and to just go away and fetch the data over HTTP. And yes, I have looked a bit at Quick, and I may well use Quick. There's no disadvantage. If you're doing HTTP, as long as your server supports it, then there's no disadvantage in not using Quick. For anyone who's interested, Quick is a way of getting HTTPS running over UDP. And they do their own connection management. I'm not planning on using it for the. Oh, you think it's promising for video games? So I don't want to use it for the low latency side of games because uh, my understanding of Quick, and I could be a little bit wrong here, is that it is similar. It's very tuned to the idea of request and response, and so it's not so good for piping data from one end to another and doing basically asynchronous communication. Is my understanding. I could be wrong there, but for requesting data, if the client wants to request data from the server, any kind of HTTP protocol is going to be better than UDP. Okay, but if the client just wants to send data to the server, or the server wants to send data to the client, just a raw UDP thing is pretty straightforward and can be lightning fast. I am getting distracted. I need the UDP transmitter service. UDP transmitter service. And what I'm going to do in here is when I generate datagrams, you'll get to see how dodgy my netcode is. Yeah, so Quick is also tailored to, like, it's been really carefully designed around SSL. So one of the issues with SSL is the number of handshakes it takes to initiate a connection, and Quick helps to reduce those round trips. That's right. It's got reliability, ordering. It's got a lot of what TCP has, but it it performs much better around the instantiation of new connections, and reuse of connections is another important use case for Quick. Yes, TCP is two-way, kind of, uh, but I believe Quick. Yeah, I can't quite remember. I will look into it, and my protocol, I'm pretty happy with my protocol, just as long as I don't need to transmit much data. And at that point, I might as well use HTTP, and whether that's over TCP or Quick, I'm not too concerned. But I don't want to use HTTP for this stuff in here. So what this does, this is the bit that generates the actual datagrams that go out to the client. And all it does is it creates a new message. It asks for every single entity from the client, from the entity service, and it just bundles them all into here. So that's obviously not ideal. What I'm going to do is I'm going to ask for, I need to think about this. I think I might just start by filtering out entities that aren't in the client's chunk. This is not the design I want to go for. Yeah, you may be right there, Griffith. Uh, so I kind of want to find the player's chunk. I'm just going to do some filtering over these entities. Ideally, this filtering would be happening server side rather than just fetching everything out of the entity service. Uh, but if I go and find an entity that is the player, can I do better than this? Yeah, I can do better than this. Actually, I'm going to do this in series, but I'm going to grab the player as a separate request. Fetch by ID, and in here I've got the session dot player ID. I think that's the entity. No, there's an entity ID. There we go. And I happen to know that an entity will always exist at the point that the that datagrams are being transmitted to the player, I think. And then what do I need? So we've got the player. We should be able to get the player's chunk. So player chunk is going to be the player entity, grab their transform. No, not their transform, their location. Grab their chunk. Hello, Enderglow, and welcome. Feel free to ask any questions. The TLDR is that I'm building a survival crafting MMO. Yeah, so I'm working on getting the trees and stones and things that are being generated on the server, having them transferred over to the client. I'm being very hacky at the moment just to get stuff transmitting because I've just started blowing my frames. Very similar sized channel there, Indiglo. It's a nice feeling crossing that 1K. I'm sure you'll agree. Okay, so we've got the player chunk, and then I'm just going to map the entities, well, filter them for entities that are close to the player. Let's do that. Entity, we're going to go return entity dot location. Drop a comment, Enderglow, on this video, and I'll be sure to subscribe back to you. Just so that I can't quite get your identity from the UI that I have here. So yeah, drop a comment down below, and I'll make sure I subscribe back. Okay, so we've got the, no, not the location. Yeah, location. Location dot chunk. Let's go const entity chunk. Yeah, it's a strange referral from YouTube. A few people who are gamers have been referred in here, and while people don't necessarily understand the coding, a lot of people just kind of throw it on in the background and kind of find out how a game's being made. Okay, so we've got the entity chunk. If entity chunk, I just need to know if they're in the same chunk. Let's go return entity chunk and player chunk and player chunk is entity chunk. I need to do a deep equals on that, don't I? Do I have an equality check on my chunk coordinate? Surely I do. I don't? I don't want to use a library for this. Public equals I'm pretty sure JavaScript doesn't do deep equality by default. Yeah. Return this dot u equal to other dot u, and this dot v is other dot v. It's possible, Enderglow, that YouTube has decided that Minecrafters with all their little redstone contraptions are probably more likely to be interested in coding. No, I'm not looking for an overload. I'm just going to call this directly. But if I say, let me just pull up just put something in there. Just uh, make a note. Finish this. Let me just, can I just pull up a node interpreter in here? Can I do uh, I can't easily load my, I'll tell you what I'll do. Chunk coordinate test. Oh, don't tell me I don't have any tests for chunk coordinates. It's a bit embarrassing. I do for axial components. Why is everything so slow? I'm just going to quickly put a test in here. Test quality. The problem with swapping between languages so much is I just forget which features different languages have. Const v1 is going to be a new vector. A new axial coordinate of 1, 2. And I'll do the same thing here. And then I expect v1 equal to v2 dot to be true. I'm pretty sure JavaScript says no on that because it does. No, I don't know. Let's just see what the test does. Yeah, that's right. So that's false. Whereas if I put in an equals function, equals v2, and in here I'll just define a quick equality operation. Public equals other is an axial q and this dot r other dot r. We don't need to convert. We don't need to check the other component. Run that, and I believe, yeah, when the test now passes. And just a reminder for anyone new here, my coordinate system is similar to Minecraft in that I've got chunks and tiles within those chunks, but mine are not square, mine are hexagonal. So my coordinate system is a little bit weird. But where I do have 3 components, I only need to test 2 of them because the third component is always the sum of the other 2 negated. Okay, so entity chunk, player chunk, and I want to say entity chunk dot equals player chunk. So I'm just going to do things that are in the same chunk for now. Filter that. That is a fair point. All right, we'll just make that an any. I'll make this a chunk coordinate. I'll make this one a chunk coordinate. Brackets where I need it. This isn't making it easy, is it? Invert chunk coordinates from a UV. This will return a chunk coordinate or undefined. This could be undefined. Is that allowed? Nope. That's better. Turn coord, then return a new chunk coordinate of otherwise undefined. Coord. Okay. Oops. Still not happy. Oh yeah, that's definitely fair. All right. Again, I'm not worrying about the fact that a lot of this could be parallelized. Just trying to get it working for now. So this should just say it will return anything that's in the same chunk. And I just realized that this whole equality thing was a bit of a waste of time because I could have actually just said the distance between the chunks is equal to 0. Would have been the absolutely the right thing to do here because I am about to scope that out a bit. Okay, what have we got now? I'll check my configuration file, make sure I'm not generating any ridiculous numbers of items. No, we're only ever going to do up to 10, 20, 33 items in a given chunk. I will need to, well, I don't need to, but I will blow away my database. Database is gone. Spin up the server again. UDP-TX is the one I'm most likely going to need to. Distance checks are slow, but I am going to have to do distance checks in here very soon anyway. At any point that this realizes that it's got too many entities, it needs to prioritize the ones that are closer. So what I'll actually be doing is sorting nearby entities. I won't be fetching all, but I'll be grabbing entities in the nearest few chunks, sorting them, and then only sending back the ones that are closest until I've filled a frame. If I get more than that, then I need to identify which ones I've missed. And then in my protocol, I have the ability to send through from the server. Where's my server message? I can send through chunk invalidations. And so that will tell the client, listen, I couldn't send you enough stuff. Could you please go and fetch the data for this chunk? Go and grab its entities some other way. And that will be slower, but it'll at least allow things that are close to the player to update quickly. Yes. Yeah, I don't mind having the equality. I if nothing else, it'll remind me later on that I do actually need the equality operator. All right. So I've deleted the database, I've run the server again, bring in the client. Hopefully we get some scatter coming in and not a whole bunch of crashes. Okay. No scatter. Uh, so I'll get a breakpoint on my datagram generator and actually see what this message is that it's creating. I also want to have a look at the buffer that's about to go out, just so we can see how big it is. Why am I not hitting that breakpoint? because it's crashing all over the place. Not found. I presume that's fetching the player. And sure enough, it's having troubles finding the player. So my assumption that let's have a look at what it actually is. I assume this entity ID is undefined. Sure that our session's re-established. I just have no idea what's happening now. Something is in a weird state. All right, bring it up. I think that one of my node processors thought that it had a breakpoint set on it. And that was confusing things. Nope, something is really unhappy. All right, bring everything down. I'm going to stop this client. I think that I must have something in a really bad state. Server should be, oh, don't run the client. Wrong button. Cool. Fortunately, the client doesn't work very well when the server is not there. So then what have I done? Oh, it's coming up. Excuse me. I've broken it. How did I break it? Nope, something's going. That looked like it was generating terrain. But my UDP transmitter is not running. I don't know why this is in such a weird state. I'm going to restart IntelliJ. Good thing I committed, yes. I mean, the only code I've changed is just at the top of the UDP transmitter. So I just hope that it's not something funny in the, because I ran into problems a week or two ago where I had something wrong with my Docker images. And that was a pain to fix because it's just really hard to get a consistent versioning when you rebuild your images because, you know, certain versions of things just aren't available anymore. And so it's hard to be consistent when you're rebuilding Docker images. So I've got the server here. I'm going to, client is stopped, completely bring down Docker. I'm actually going to bring Docker up on the command line just to rule out IntelliJ being weird. So wait for this to look like it's come up. That is the server running. And the UDP transmitter service is indeed apparently running. So I'll run it again from here. Take that breakpoint out just in case we're hitting the breakpoint early and that's killing things. This is looking a bit better. I have no idea what was going on. But yeah, this is working now. We shouldn't be hitting this breakpoint because we don't have any players to send out datagrams to. But as soon as the player gets in, we should hit that breakpoint. There it is. And I think that something has just crashed anyway. No, we've just got a whole bunch of stuff set to undefined. Oh, because we haven't started running this code yet. Okay, so session, we do have an entity ID over here. So I'll have to disable that breakpoint so I don't keep on hitting it. ID, why can't it fetch by that ID? That ID is, okay, let's go session entity ID. We'll just copy that out. Come in here and grab a list of all of the entities in the game. Oh, don't delete them. And I'm just going to look for that. It exists, that's a player. I wonder if I've ever tested this function before. Client.get. That's right. Oh, that's not right. How's that even working? That's meant to have brackets around it. I shouldn't be able to call .json on that because it should be calling .json on that, which is a promise. I don't know how that wasn't crashing earlier. Although this works. Oh, this must be some weird, like the fact that it's working. Sorry, I can't see anyone's comments at the moment. I've lost, find my window that has comments on it. Sorry, I missed the last. Good thing you committed. And then Griffic says, you're repeatedly making me glad my server is derived by areas instead of service. I think this will scale well though. Since I have to do it, yeah, atmospheric simulations. Uh, yeah, so I'm going to run into similar issues to you when I start to do things like collision detection, but I do have some plans about how I can manage that. Even set up to generate new areas need full atmospherics and physics implemented. Yes. Yeah, I have some ideas for how I'll solve things that do require a lot of local knowledge. Um, they're not, the ideas aren't fully fleshed out yet, but I'm pretty confident I'll be okay. So I think the reason I don't need these brackets, by the way, is just a Node.js weirdness. I bet you if I put that there, it wouldn't work because that would be calling .json on this expression. But because the .json is on a separate line, I believe it's being smart and knowing that that await applies to that. So the question then is, why is it not fetching that entity? Well, can I fetch it from the command line? slash that, pipe it through JQ. That doesn't look like it. $404. I know that endpoint used to work. All right, I'm going to shut everything down just so I can debug this. This is going to be something wrong in the entity controller. I should have a fetch method, fetch by ID or something. That's meant to be an underscore, isn't it? Yeah, I agree, Graphic, but I mean, it's definitely calling JSON on the result of the await rather than the. Yeah, I think it's trying to. It's somehow putting brackets around that expression because it is a common thing where you want to call something on an await. So it's possible they're doing something in there. I do need to look into that because it does feel a bit weird, but it's definitely working because I can do the fetch all, and that's clearly not calling .json on the promise. So it is somehow working. I'd say that they're using await as an operator and using whitespace. I mean, there are cases that whitespace affects operators, of course. Things like, I mean, uh, plus plus versus plus space plus are very different things. Oh, that's, yeah, no, that's separate. Ignore me. All right. So I think that should work. Let's give that a spin. Make sure I can fetch the player. I'll need to bring a player in because it's probably going to go and clean up that player. I only get, I think, 60 seconds to the entity stays in the game. Let's just grab all the entities. And then just grab one of them. Just to see if I can grab that one. It's probably a tree or no, it's a stone. I can grab it by ID. Okay. So I think that's fixed. The server is running. Run the client. Player entity. I think something might have just crashed. I was expecting it to either hit the error breakpoint or move on to the next instruction there. So I think that the node process just died. I'm just going to turn off all my breakpoints for now. We are definitely getting further through. Here we have some scatter coming in. All right, so we've got some stones, we've got some trees, and as I move around, we start to see more scatter coming in. Beautiful. It's some floating stones. I'll get to that later. But yeah, so it's kind of being slightly sensible here. So I might as well go over what my proposed design is here. I don't want it doing what it's doing at the moment, which is just sending through entire entities over UDP. It's not what I want it to do. What I want it to do is I want it to have a desired state that it wants the client to be able to see. And that is basically what came out of here. I don't want it to actually have to fetch that, but I want it to try and construct a state that's potentially quite large. I then want it to remember what state it thinks the server has based on what what it thinks the client has based on what the client has acknowledged. So it's going to have to store these packets over in Redis so that it can always remember what it sent to the client. Whenever the client acknowledges something, it will update that client's session to say, all right, the client now has this state. Then when it goes to generate a new frame, it goes and fetches whatever entities it needs, and then it will look at what it believes the client has versus what it wants the client to have, and it will send a diff out to the client describing those differences. Now, only once those differences get big enough, the client, uh, once those changes get too big, the server will send one of those invalidation packets out to the client, and then the client needs a way of acknowledging that it has fetched all the data for those invalidations. So I've got a fair bit of work to do in here. I'll start doing some of it now. I probably won't stream too much longer today though. But that is my goal, is to completely refactor this transmitter code so that we can push off all those changes out to the player. So the very first thing I'm going to do is change this fetch all to something that fetches entities close to the client. We obviously don't want to fetch absolutely everything. So I do have a way of doing that already. I can do a query. I can then pass through a region. A region is, I think I have a chunk, and that has a U and a V. Now, they can come just from the player, I guess. I should confirm that the player always has that chunk. Well, let's instead just say that if the player doesn't have a chunk, so if not player chunk, then I'm just going to return an empty packet for now. Construct server message. Return a server message. Promise of a server message. Oops, that needs an await. Not much for me to say while I'm writing this bit of code. This is just me refactoring, changing this so that rather than fetching everything, it's only going to fetch things that are within a couple of chunks of the player, further than when we necessarily need to send data back urgently, but we want an okay view of the world. type on these. Centroid chunk has a U and a V. Region centroid chunk. Region centroid chunk. Oh, that's because that could be, we know that's specified. We returned up in here if it wasn't defined. I'm just going to say the center of the chunk. The code for my querying is a little bit more efficient when you are searching from the center. If you're doing a search from off center, it sometimes returns a bit of extra, it fetches a bit of extra data out of Mongo before clipping it back out again. So we need a radius. I'm going to give it a chunks radius. We're going to ask for things within 2 chunks. Now this is a function I'm going to define. The number of chunks we want to search out, and all this needs to return is how many hex tiles out do we need to look to get that far out. And the answer to that is, if it's 0, we just need the current chunk, is the way I'll interpret that. The radius of the current chunk is coordinate system.chunkRadius. And then for each further chunk we're going to look at, coordinate system dot chunk diameter. Okay, so here we are going to, let's get this looking a bit prettier. We fetch all the entities within 2 chunks of the player. It's a full 2 chunk radius plus our current chunk. And then it goes off and finds things in the current chunk. So I'm just going to test this, make sure that I haven't broken anything. This should behave exactly the same way. That doesn't look good. What have I done? Oh, something's not compiling in here. Construct server message. What have I done? Return message. There we go. We'll make sure it still works. The only difference here is that the transmitter service is not going to be handling as many entities, but the client won't see any difference from that. Out of here, get back into the client once the server has come up. I got back into this weird state, haven't I? There is definitely something not right with my development environment. Don't want to blow away my database. So I'm going to do a docker compose stop. Everything stopped. restart IntelliJ. I'm going to have to spend some time working out what's going wrong there. I won't do that on stream. Okay, run it outside the debugger just in case that's causing problems. That looks like it's all up. Every time I restart IntelliJ, though, I lose my comment view. Okay, so this is still working as expected. It's bringing the scatter in as we go into each chunk. Nice. So next, I need it to start telling the client to go away and fetch data for chunks that are not the player's current chunk. I think that's right. The problem is, yeah, this will do. This is the, I might actually just change it to go and tell the client if there's more than a certain number of updates within a chunk, tell the player to go off and fetch stuff for that chunk. That's a good first step. So rather than filtering, what I want to do here is I want to bring these out into some sort of an index so that I can query by, I can look at how many entities there are in each chunk we just pulled back in here. Now, I've written this code a few times. I think I'm going to have to come up with a general class for doing chunk indexes. This probably belongs up in the, it's not really a coordinate system thing, so I'm going to put it in I54 common. And I'm going to create a class called, I don't know, by chunk index. And this is going to allow arbitrary data to be placed on, I need to be a little bit careful here because I need to modify stuff in the index. Yeah, I think this class is going to get too messy to do on stream. I think that's something I'm going to have to do off stream because that's going to need, to be able to update items in the index, I'm going to need to be able to pass in functions to update the data. So yeah, do something a bit like Redux there. So I think I might just build up the index manually here. Index is going to be, this is going to be a type which is done by you. This is the first parameter of the hex coordinate. That's going to map to another object mapping v, and then that is going to map onto a list of entities. That doesn't need to be an object. Let's call this entities by chunk. And now I need to fill this in. In here, I need to take each of the entities. Well, this is going to be a reduce step for sure. We're going to take a result. We're going to take an entity. And all of this is going to map to this empty object. Okay. Result. Okay, entity is picking up the correct type here. Result is not, so I'm just going to stick with it. Can I help it here? Am I allowed to put type declarations in the middle of a function? Index is going to be equal to... Can I do that? That would make my life a lot easier. Yes, I can. So now I can tell it that that is an index, and the error messages should just make more sense now. Now, I should be able to do this with a whopping big spread operator, I think. We need to give it the result, whatever the existing result was. However, I might need to do an entity dot location dot chunk dot u. I believe these will always be defined, but I'm just going to go entity dot location dot chunk. Not that. Then I'm just not going to include it in the index. I don't know why that would come back from the query operation, but this is probably a bit cleaner. In here, in this case, we just return result as it was. So we don't put that entity in if we don't know what the chunk was. So that means we can then say that that is going to be dot 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 result. Pull those out, just a decomposition, u comma v, it's going to be equal to that. Oops. So we grab the existing result for that u coordinate, but we override the v coordinate to be dot 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 result u v. This is actually a list. Now the beauty of the spread operator, for anyone who's not all that familiar with it, if this is undefined, this code will still work. It will just not add anything into this new object. Likewise, if this one is undefined, I will need a question mark dot somewhere in here. Where's my question mark key gone? Question mark dot. If result u is undefined, then this will initialize an empty object and then just put our own v coordinate in. In this case, if this expression is undefined, then this will be an empty list. Otherwise, it'll pre-populate it. And in here, I think I can just do entity. That was not nearly as bad a spread operator as I was expecting it to be. Spread operation. All our types look right. Get rid of that. Then what I'm going to do in here is just send through invalidations for everything. So this code here, I'm actually going to just comment out. It's going to come back. But I want to test my chunk invalidation part of the protocol. So I reckon I'll be streaming another 9 minutes. I'll finish up at midday my time, which is just at the end of this current hour. So we've got entities by chunk. I now want to step through each of those. So we've grouped them all. I'm going to change this to chunk component. I'm about to go and process this again to get it into basically of the form, get it into the form. We're going to have a list of, well, basically a tuple of coordinate, comma, entities, and it's going to be a list of those. This is just going to make it a bit easier to process. And the best way to do that is, I don't think I can get it into that form in a single operation. Not efficiently, because you can't set that as an index on an object, unfortunately. Entities by chunk component dot reduce. Let's call it a by chunk. That is entities by chunk component. I'm going to go entities by chunk. Oops, let's just call it a result for now. Const entities by chunk. Result, comma, reduce. Oh, sorry, this needs to be object dot entries, I think it is, yes. So this is going to return this expression here will return a list of items containing a U coordinate and one of these sub-indexes. So this is going to be we've got the result. I'm going to then decompose a U and a V index. Let's call it that. This is going to get nasty. How smart was it there? Did it get the other parameters right? U is a string. That is not right. That should be a number. Oh, okay, I think I'm going to have to cast that. Object.entries. Yes. It does insist on that being a string. That's okay. There's bound to be a better way of me doing this. But this will work for now. So I'm going to let U string be a string. VIndex is pretty much the correct type. I mean, I don't like the fact that it's a P instead of a V, but that's all right. And it is a list of entities. Okay, so that type is correct. This one needs to be converted, and this will become whatever I pass back. This needs an initializer, which is just going to be an empty list for now. Then U is going to be equal to parseInt the string. We then need to take the V index, convert the V index to be of the form, so this is going to be V, comma, entities, like that. Very convoluted code. Hopefully it'll make sense when I get to the end of this conversion. So V index, no, I need object.entries. V index. Then we reduce it. I'm going to call this V result, comma, entities. And that is going to map to, if I can stop mashing my keyboard. V is going to be a string. Sorry, that's not meant to be, yeah, that goes V comma entities, but that is a V string. Const V is going to be parseInt the V string. Then in here, we're going to return V and the entities. Now, hopefully that gets a whole bunch of the types sorted out. I was really hoping it would resolve these. Okay, I'll be explicit in here. This is an object of the form V number maps to entity like that. That's looking better. Nope, that is wrong. It should actually be a map of the number to entity like that. Maybe if I mash the types enough, I'll magically get the right incantation here. My result is meant to be one of these. Oh, yeah, it's just number, comma, entity. So this is the V value. This is the list of entities for that V value. That is a tuple. That is not meant to be there. V string is a string. Entities is correct. I don't see the issue here. I don't want to read that error message. Reduce operators are awesome once you get them working. That is a number. This is of the correct type, obviously. V is a number, entities is an entity array. So this is a number, comma, entity array. Do I need to be explicit about this type? Nope. Oh, what? TypeScript. All right. For some reason, it didn't know the type of. It didn't know that the type of this expression mapped the type of that expression. All right. So once I've told TypeScript how to understand my code, I've got that. This is going to be a const entities by V. And so in here, my coord is going to be equal to yeah, I know it can be a bit bad when you treat tuples as an array, but at no point, like if you run map or filter over a tuple, then it can get pretty funny. But I'm surprised it couldn't handle this one. Um, but anyway, this hopefully is what I want. I mean, it's possible I've actually got something wrong in here, and this has tricked it into doing the wrong thing. We'll find out when I try to run it. So entities coord is going to be equal to, so I need to take, this is going to be a new coordinate, taking the u value and the v value, and do I have access to the entities from in here? Oh, sorry, I need to loop over this, don't I? So entities.coord is actually going to be entities by v, and I'm going to map that into v entry goes to, and in here we need to return a new coordinate. I definitely have a u. I have a v entry can actually be decomposed into v is a number. Entities is an entity array. It doesn't like my v any. Oh, that hopefully that just fixes itself in a moment. So we give it a u comma v, and the entities. Entities.coord. Let's give this an explicit type. Number entity like that. Number is not assignable to number. What? I've got a bracket in the wrong spot here, don't I? It's the same thing. Number entity array is not assignable to type. Oh, number colon. It's meant to be a comma. Still not allowing me to decompose that. Oh, I need a bracket around that. That one's easy. Bracket there and a bracket there. There we go. Don't need to specify the type on that one. Don't need, that shouldn't be an entity. Oh, there we go. Don't need to type on that one. U is a number, isn't it? Yep, that's right. That should be a chunk coordinate. Okay. Now I should be able to return result, comma, entities by coord. Looks like I'm going to have to give that a type. Which is going to be something ugly. This is going to be a, oh no, it's not too ugly. It's just starting to confuse myself. It is a chunk coordinate followed by an array of entities, and it's an array of those. Still not there. Uh, at least got the right type up here now. So much for me finishing at midday. I will just try and get this compiling though, and then I will definitely be finishing up. Oh, okay, this looks more legitimate. Entities by coord is meant to be one of these. And it doesn't like this, presumably because this map is definitely returning, for each one, it's returning a tuple of chunk coordinates, comma, array of entities. Chunk coordinate, comma, array of entities. Oh, I think I'm about to see what it is. This needs a dot, dot, dot. Got it. That wasn't the TypeScript being a pain then. That was just me missing a spread operator. Okay. So this is a really expensive way of me saying, what are all the chunks within two chunks of the player? Because now this list, if I ignore the entities, which is exactly what I'm about to do, the first parameter is the coordinate that we need to tell the client to invalidate. So I'm going to return in here a server message dot from JSON we're going to give it some chunk updates, which are going to be the entities by chunk dot map chunk coordinates goes to and there is how we tell the client that we're not actually going to send it any data and instead it has to go fetch it all itself. That was a lot of code for that. All right, so I'm return message, return. I just want this compiling. Sorry. There we go. It's compiling. Perfect. So I am going to finish up here. I will probably this afternoon. I've got some other things to do this afternoon, but if I find time, I will probably go through and start implementing the handler for these invalidations over on the client. And so we should end up basically with a client doing everything it was before, but with terrain scatter. It should still have working trolls, but they'll be really slow. They'll take ages to update because nothing will be coming in over UDP anymore. It'll be UDP messages telling the client to go off and fetch its own stuff. And my plan is to, on stream tomorrow, start working on getting this to start sending through high priority updates. So it will tend not to do those entities that are marked as static, which is things like trees. It'll tend to just go and tell the client to work those out itself. But things like trolls, it will send through the UDP updates and not expect the client to go off and fetch them. For anyone who doesn't know, my devlog episode came out last night covering all of the pathfinding stuff. I think that I can type this into chat and it will Nope, that's just well, don't forget to subscribe. You can do that too. But go and check out the episode. And until next time, same place tomorrow, I will catch you around. Thank you.